Okay, this is something that I was reminded of by some of the posts that have been going on, and actually I completely forgot about it until I saw this post that went up. And some of you that follow this, like the Maynard website, you'll know what I mean. But anyway, band would play around Philadelphia, and whenever the band would play, my mom would cook for the band. It happened about 5 times. It was great. This is a photo of one of the times. This is my mom cooking for Maynard. That's a birthday cake, Italian cream cake. Like, I don't know, 25 eggs in there. Comes with a stent and some Lipitor. And this is Ed Sargent, my mom, Carmela, and there's Maynard. So this is in our basement, all right? Anyway, when we would eat, we would sit and eat, Maynard would, like, he'd always be telling stories anyway. So what I would do is I would put recordings on, but not like Birdland and MacArthur Park, none of that. I would have on like Jam Session, Do's, Color Him Wild, Message from Newport, all the Slide Hampton stuff, the Don Sebesky stuff, the Willie Maiden writing, all that great stuff. And that's the stuff I put up there. So I had all those records. Man, I have records from here, 40 feet worth of records. And so we're playing all this stuff. And when I put on this, where the heck is it? This. I put these on because when these came out, this thing, right, this Roulette record, all right, collection, right? So I put those on, and Maynard, every time he would hear a certain tune that would remind him of something, he would say, "Oh yeah, I remember, we did this, and but listen to Ronnie Cuba here. Yeah, he was really great, and he would make these great comments." So I put this on, and as soon as I put it on, he went, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Well, here, this is collection," and I showed it to him. This is the box. I showed it to him, and he went, right? Screwed 3 times. That's all he said. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean? Screwed 3 times. He goes, "See these? Roulette?" Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is what he said. Because Roulette was owned by Morris Levy. Morris Levy owned Birdland, a couple jazz clubs, was in charge of all the hat check rooms, was in charge of all the cigarette vending machines, and he was like mob related. He was like the entertainment arm of the overall mob. And, he took something from everything. And if you had to play New York, and if you were a jazz musician, you had to play New York. Otherwise, you couldn't get yourself established. You had to play ball with Morris Levy. You had to sign to his label, which was Roulette. And you had to play ball. You had to do whatever he said. So, and Maynard was one of those guys. So when you see the Count Basie Roulette records, when you see Maynard Roulette, all those Roulette records, get a load of this. So I said, "Well, what do you mean ripped off for the 3rd time?" He goes, "Well, I remember when we did those recordings, you do an LP for Morris," and he would say, "Okay, that cost $70,000. And he's pulling some number out. You don't see the books. He says, you don't know where he's getting this number, but he tells you that cost $70,000. So he says, Morris says, "I need to make that back before you see anything, because I have to get my expenses back before we start seeing what a profit is." So Maynard, the artists don't know. They're out there gigging. They don't know what the numbers are. So the record's not going to make that kind of money back, not unless you get a really big hit. So what happens is after a while, the record's not selling as much. You get a bump when the record gets released, and it starts to, die away in terms of sales. But so Mars comes back and he says, "Hey, we need to pay that off. So let's do another record. Maybe you'll get a hit." So boom, it costs another $70,000. Well, now you're into them for $140,000. So you're making all these records and you're never seeing anything. There's a good chance you won't see anything. So Maynard said he made like 5 or 6 records on Roulette. Never saw any money, because the more you make, the more in debt you get, and the further behind you get, and you don't even know if the numbers are right that he's giving you. But everybody went through that, and you had to play ball with him, otherwise you could not play New York. This guy ran everything. It was a corrupt thing. There's a book called Hitmen. If anyone is interested in reading about the history of the record business, whoo. So don't get the art of the music that you love mixed up with the business. They're not, there's 2 different animals, and they kind of coexist. And that always changes. That's a whole thing. But Morris Levy factors in big in the record business, especially in New York, especially with all the artists. And it wasn't just jazz. It was everybody who was recording almost. And he had his hands in everything. So what happens is there are like 5 records that Maynard never saw any money for. Well, Morris Levy at some point, I think, passes away. All the property gets, somebody buys it. So now let's say somebody, Joe Bajanogol, buys all their stuff. All right, so now it's his. He doesn't know anything about Maynard, that Maynard didn't get paid. All of a sudden, somebody else has it. And, Maynard is even further from ever seeing any money because now it was bought cleanly from, hopefully it was bought cleanly, but it doesn't matter. Once somebody buys it, then Maynard's kind of cut out of it. Well, then Maynard, I guess this stuff just sits around forever. And then Mosaic picks it up, which is a great label. They put out a lot of great like anthologies. They go into the vaults and they find like some great recordings that have just been sitting there. A lot of great information. I mean, all these are great, all of them. I must have about 30 of these. They're just fantastic. But then they get it, and then they sell it, and it finally comes out. So that's why Maynard said 3 times that it was screwed, because when Mosaic puts it out, Maynard didn't see anything. When Morris Levy put it out, Maynard didn't see anything. When the guy in the middle held on to it, Maynard didn't see anything. So he said, yeah, but that's the way it had to be. It wasn't anybody's, it wasn't the fault of Mosaic. This is how the business ran. But when it was funny, I put that up and he goes, man, screwed 3 times for the same project. I was like, no kidding. And he goes, yeah. So check out Morris Levy. I mean, if you YouTube Morris Levy and he's interviewed, I don't know nothing about anything. It was one of those. But Maynard said, there were some stories, some real stories of, you hear people hanging people over the railing by their ankles and stuff like that. He goes, that stuff was happening. And he's, so Maynard was funny. And I put it on. He always had these comments, but I wasn't ready for that. The reason I'm putting this up is because I saw someone posted this. Some great music on it. The music is great. And this particular set, I mean, if you can get it, you'd love it. Because Mosaic always puts out great stuff. The Mosaic is just fantastic with everything that they put out. But Morris Levy, Roulette Records, ran New York. You couldn't do anything unless you played ball with him. Interesting. So, welcome to the record business, right?